snowstorm on Varney's 9 was the kind that silenced even the mining machines. The outpost's lights flickered weakly through the white blur, and the wind howled like it wanted to tear the metal roofs away. Inside a small tavern near the edge of the settlement, warmth was a luxury bought by the minute. A few workers sat hunched over their drinks, eyes on their steaming cups, hoping the cold wouldn't find its way inside. At a far corner, a human named Jalen wiped frost from his beard and rubbed his hands near the dim heater. He wasn't a rich man. He wasn't even a local. Just a drifter and engineer between jobs, traveling to the outer colonies in search of work that didn't ask too many questions. He noticed her the moment the door opened. The blizzard swept in first. Then she stepped through it, an alien woman with emerald green skin and silver white hair, her cloak soaked with snow, her eyes distant and tired. She walked slowly, like she hadn't eaten or slept in days. Conversations stopped as she entered. No one spoke, but Jalen could feel the room shift. Aliens weren't uncommon here, but she was different. Elegant, almost glowing under the weak light, like she didn't belong in a place full of frozen dust and rusted machines. She looked around the bar, confused, maybe afraid. Her hands shook as she reached for her belt, realizing she had no credits to pay. The bartender, a rough man with tired eyes, crossed his arms and gave a slow shake of his head. No freebies. Not even for the pretty ones, he muttered. The alien girl lowered her gaze, her voice soft as a whisper. Please. Something warm, anything. Her accent was strange clear, but full of weight, like every word cost her energy. Jalen stood before he even realized it. He didn't know why. Maybe it was the way her voice trembled, or maybe it was because he had once been that cold, that lost. He walked to the counter, ignoring the stares, and slid his last 2 credit chips across the metal. Give her something hot, he said. The bartender snorted but obeyed, filling 2 steaming mugs with thick brown liquid that passed for coffee on Varney's 9. Jalen took one and placed it gently in front of her. Here, it's not much, but it helps. She blinked, staring at him as if he had spoken in an ancient language. Her fingers brushed the cup carefully, afraid it might vanish. Why would you pay for me? She asked quietly. Jalen shrugged. Because you look like you need it more than I do. She tilted her head, studying him like she was trying to understand something beyond his words. The warmth of the drink spread slowly through her hands, and she let out a long breath, a small smile forming. Humans are strange, she said softly. You help others without knowing who they are. He chuckled. Sometimes that's the point. They sat in silence for a while, the sound of wind against the walls filling the gaps. Then she spoke again, her tone quieter, as if afraid of being overheard. You shouldn't have done that, she said. If they knew who I was. She stopped herself, eyes darting to the door. Jalen frowned. Who? He asked. But before she could answer, the tavern's main door burst open again, and a gust of icy air swept through. 3 armored figures stepped in tall, metallic, their faces hidden behind black visors. The bartender froze, the room went still. The alien woman's hand trembled, her cup clinking softly against the table. Jalen noticed her posture change. She was no longer just tired, she was ready to run. One of the armored figures spoke in a harsh, mechanical voice. Subject Veyra located. Capture alive. Authorization from House Velnar. The name meant nothing to Jalen, but the look in her eyes said everything. She whispered, "They found me." Before Jalen could react, the nearest soldier raised a pulse weapon. Instinct took over, he grabbed her hand and pulled her behind the counter as a blast tore through the table where she had been sitting. Cups shattered. The room erupted in chaos. He didn't think, didn't plan. He just ran, dragging her through the back door into the freezing storm. Outside, snow whipped against their faces. He shouted over the wind, "Who are they?" She turned to him, her silver hair glowing faintly under the storm lights. "They're my father's men," she said. "And if they take me back, I'll never be free again." Jalen blinked, trying to understand, but there was no time. The soldiers were already pushing through the door behind them. The storm howled louder, and the two of them vanished into the white blur, one human with nothing to lose, and one alien stranger with everything to hide. That night, the galaxy didn't change. But something inside Jalen did. The storm outside was merciless. Wind roared across the barren ice fields of Varnes 9, cutting into their skin like blades. Jalen held the alien woman's hand tightly as they stumbled through knee-deep snow, half blind against the freezing gusts. Behind them, faint lights flickered through the blizzard. The armored hunters were following. The woman stumbled, gasping for breath. "They'll catch us," she said, her voice trembling with exhaustion. "You should go. They won't hurt you." Jalen shook his head, his jaw clenched against the cold. "Not leaving you here. Keep moving." He didn't know why he was risking his life for her. He barely knew her name. But something in her eyes, the quiet fear, the strength hidden behind it, kept him from walking away. They pushed forward until the outpost. Lights vanished behind the wall of snow. The storm was so thick now that even sound felt muffled. Finally, Jalen spotted the dark outline of an old cargo shed half buried in ice. He kicked the door open, pulling her inside. The wind slammed it shut behind them, and for a moment, the world went quiet except for their ragged breathing. The shed was small, filled with broken crates and metal scraps. Jalen grabbed an old heating coil from the corner, fiddling with the power cell until it flickered to life, casting a dim orange glow. The alien woman sat against the wall, her silver hair damp with melting snow, her skin pale beneath its green hue. She looked fragile now, like a candle in a storm. "Who are they?" Jalen asked quietly as he wrapped an old blanket around her shoulders. She hesitated, watching the heater's light dance across the floor. "They are guards from House Velnar," she said. "They serve my father." Her words carried a tone of old pain. "Your father?" Jalen frowned. "Why would your own family send people to hunt you?" She looked up at him, her eyes sharp and sad. "Because I ran away," she said. "Because I refused to do what he wanted." She paused, her voice softening. "My name is Veyra Velnar, heir to the Velnar Dominion." Jalen blinked. He'd heard of the name. The Velnar Dominion was one of the wealthiest corporate empires in the galaxy, owning entire planets, trading fleets, even private armies. And now, the shivering woman beside him claimed to be its only heir. "You're serious?" he said. "You're that Velnar?" She nodded slowly. "I was supposed to marry a rival family's son to strengthen our alliance. But I refused. I wanted to live a real life, not a life written on a contract. So I ran." She gave a small, bitter laugh. "Turns out the galaxy isn't kind to runaways. Especially rich ones." Jalen sat back, staring at her in disbelief. The idea was absurd. He was a mechanic from a forgotten mining world. She was a billionaire alien princess running from her own empire. Yet, here they were hiding together in a frozen shed, trying to stay alive. He looked at her again, noticing how her hand still shook slightly as she held the mug he'd given her. "You didn't need to pay for me," she said quietly. "I could have repaid you 1,000 times over." He smiled faintly. "Didn't do it for a reward." For a while, they sat in silence, the heater's warmth spreading slowly around them. Then, faintly through the storm, came the sound of a drone engine, a high, sharp hum growing louder. Veyra's eyes widened. "They found us." Jalen stood up fast, checking his small handheld scanner. 3 blips approaching. No time to think. He grabbed his toolkit from his belt and started yanking wires from the heater. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Buying us time," he said. pulling out a small spark detonator. He wired the coil to overload and gestured toward the back hatch. "When I say go, run as fast as you can." The drone's red light glowed through a crack in the door. Jalen counted to 3, then kicked the heater over. It sparked violently, sending bright arcs of light across the floor. The drone burst through the window and the heater exploded, filling the shed with blinding fire. Jalen pulled Veyra out the back just as the shockwave knocked them both into the snow. They tumbled down a slope, sliding into a frozen ravine. The fire's light flickered above as debris rained down. When they stopped, Jalen groaned, his body aching from the fall. Veyra leaned against him, coughing from the smoke. "You're insane," she said weakly, but there was a hint of a smile on her lips. "So I've been told," he said. "Come on, there's a cave up ahead. We'll rest there." He helped her to her feet, both of them limping through the snow toward the dark shape of a rocky ridge. The wind howled, but beneath it, Jalen could hear the faint whir of more drones. The hunt wasn't over. Inside the cave, they collapsed near a natural vent of warm air seeping from the planet's crust. The heat was faint, but enough to keep them alive. Veyra watched him silently as he checked his tools. "You risked your life for someone you don't know," she said. "You humans really are strange." Jalen smiled tiredly. "Maybe, but sometimes that's what makes us worth keeping around." Her expression softened, the cold in her eyes melting just a little. For the first time she looked less like royalty and more like someone real, someone scared and grateful. "If we survive this," she said quietly, "I'll make sure you're never forgotten." Jalen chuckled, shaking his head. "Let's just focus on surviving first." Outside, through the storm, a distant voice crackled from a radio, metallic, cold, and precise. "Target escaped with a human. Authorization to use lethal force granted." The sound faded into static, carried away by the wind. Deep inside the cave, Jalen and Veyra sat close to the faint warmth. Unaware that their small act of kindness had just sparked something far larger than either of them could imagine. The morning came slowly on Varney's 9, if it could even be called morning. The sky outside the cave was still gray, filled with swirling snow, but the wind had calmed a little. Jalen woke first, his back sore and his fingers stiff from the cold. He turned to see Veyra still asleep beside the vent, her silver hair spread across the ground like frost. For a moment he just looked at her, the woman who had turned his quiet night into chaos. She didn't look like a billionaire heiress. She looked like someone who had carried too many burdens for too long. When she stirred, her eyes opened slowly, glowing faintly in the dim light. "You stayed awake all night," she said softly. Jalen smiled weakly. "Didn't want the fire to die." She sat up, rubbing her hands together. "You humans," she said, shaking her head, "you risk yourselves for reasons I still don't understand." He laughed quietly. "Maybe that's our best and worst quality." For a while, neither spoke. They listened to the wind outside, the faint hum of distant drones still searching. Veyra finally broke the silence. "My father won't stop until I'm found," she said. "He doesn't care what happens to you." Jalen shrugged. "Then we'll just have to make sure he doesn't find us." She looked at him, studying his face. "You speak as if running from an empire is simple." He smiled. "Compared to repairing broken ships in a vacuum?" "Almost." Veyra's lips curved slightly, but her eyes stayed serious. "You don't understand who he is," she said quietly. "My father controls fleets, trade routes, even governments. He's not just powerful, he's feared. If he finds out you helped me, he'll destroy you without hesitation." Jalen met her gaze. "Guess I'll just have to make sure he doesn't." She looked away, frowning, as if unsure whether to call him foolish or brave. Then, after a pause, she reached into her coat and pulled out a small metallic cube. It was no larger than her palm, engraved with glowing blue lines. "What's that?" Jalen asked. "The reason they're chasing me," she said. "It's a data core. It contains the genetic code of every heir to House Velnar and something else. My father's biggest secret." Jalen leaned closer. "What kind of secret?" She hesitated, then looked at him, her voice barely a whisper. "He has no heirs. Not anymore. I'm the last." The words hung in the air, heavy and cold. "He's dying," she continued. "His body is failing, and he's been searching for a way to transfer his consciousness into a new host. Me." Jalen froze. "He wants to take your body?" She nodded, her expression grim. "He calls it continuation. A way for his empire to live forever. But it means killing me." Jalen's stomach twisted. "And that's why you ran?" She nodded again. "This data core contains proof of his plan, every illegal experiment, every failed transfer. If I can reach the central relay on this planet, I can transmit it to the Galactic Council. They'll destroy him." Jalen rubbed a hand over his face. "So that's why his soldiers are after you? To stop you from sending this?" "Yes," she said. "If I fail, he wins. And if he wins, billions will serve a ghost." She looked at him again, her voice trembling just slightly. "That's why I can't stop. Even if it costs my life." Jalen was quiet for a long time. He looked at her, this woman who had every reason to hide, yet still chose to fight. "Then you're not running," he said finally. "You're saving a galaxy." She smiled faintly. "That's a kind way of saying I'm desperate." "Desperate can be good," Jalen said. "It's what keeps people alive." They packed what little they had and stepped out into the snow again. The storm had eased enough for visibility. Far in the distance, through the haze, Jalen spotted the faint glow of towers, the mining relay station she had mentioned. "That's our way out," he said, pointing. Veyra nodded. "It's heavily guarded," she said. "But if we can get inside, I can upload the data." They started walking, keeping low through the drifts, using the jagged ice ridges for cover. The cold bit into their skin, and their movements slowed, but they didn't stop. Every few minutes, Jalen checked the scanner. Drones circled high above, their searchlights sweeping the snow. At one point, they froze as a patrol ship passed overhead, its engines rumbling like thunder. They waited until it was gone, hearts pounding, breath fogging in the air dot as they neared the relay station. The wind picked up again. Jalen crouched behind a rock, scanning the perimeter. 2 guards. 1 drone. "We can make it if we're quiet." Veyra looked at him skeptically. "Do you usually sneak into military compounds for fun?" "Only on weekends," he said with a grin. They waited for the guards to turn their backs, then slipped across the ice, moving silently. The closer they got, the louder the hum of machinery became. Jalen hacked the outer gate's control panel using his portable tool. Sparks flew, and the door clicked open just enough for them to squeeze through. Inside, the air was warmer, filled with the hum of power cores. Veyra looked up at the massive antenna that pierced the ceiling. "That's the transmitter," she said. "Once I link the core, the message will reach every system in the Dominion." But before Jalen could answer, the sound of boots echoed from the corridor. He turned and froze. A squad of armored soldiers stood at the other end, weapons raised. Their leader stepped forward, his voice cold through the cum. "Lady Veyra Velnar," he said. "Your father sends his regards. Hand over the data core, and perhaps the human will die quickly." Veyra stepped back, clutching the cube to her chest. Jalen's mind raced. They were trapped. The corridor behind them was sealed. The only way out was through the soldiers. He glanced at her, at the woman who had risked everything to stop her father. "You trust me?" he asked suddenly. She looked at him, confused but firm. "With my life." Jalen exhaled, gripping the plasma cutter from his belt. "Then stay behind me." The lights flickered as the first shots rang out. Asterisk. The first blast hit the wall behind them, spraying molten metal across the floor. Jalen pulled Veyra down behind a control console as more shots tore through the air. The sound was deafening inside the narrow corridor. Sparks rained down like burning snowflakes. "We're pinned," Jalen shouted over the noise. Veyra clutched the data core tightly, her face pale under the flickering lights. "They won't stop. They'll destroy everything to keep this secret," she yelled back. Jalen peeked from cover, firing his plasma cutter at the nearest soldier. It wasn't a weapon, but the bright blue beam sliced across the trooper's armor, forcing him back with a shout. "Stay low," Jalen said, grabbing her arm and pulling her toward a side door. They ran through it, slamming it shut behind them. The corridor ahead was darker, lit only by warning lights flashing red. Sirens began to wail. "They've triggered the lockdown," Veyra said breathlessly. "We're trapped inside the relay." Jalen looked around quickly, scanning the hall. "Then we find another exit." He spotted a maintenance tunnel hatch half buried under pipes. "There." He pried it open and gestured for her to crawl inside. "Go, I'll follow." The tunnel was narrow, barely wide enough for them to squeeze through. Metal groaned under their weight. The air was hot, smelling of oil and static. Behind them, the echo of boots grew louder. "They're close," Jalen muttered. Veyra crawled faster, her hands trembling but determined. "If we reach the reactor core, I can reroute power," she said. "It might open the central gate." Jalen nodded. "Do it." They crawled deeper into the tunnel until they reached a small vent overlooking a chamber, filled with humming machinery and glowing wires. It was the heart of the relay station. They dropped down quietly. Jalen immediately went to work, connecting his tools to a terminal. Sparks flickered as he bypassed the security. "I can't hold them off forever," he said. "Make it fast." Veyra pressed the cube into the terminal slot, her hands moving quickly across the screen. "It's uploading," she said. "Once it finishes, the data will broadcast to every Dominion channel." The progress bar moved painfully slow. Jalen could hear the pounding of boots approaching again. "They're almost here." The first soldier burst through the side door, weapon raised. Jalen grabbed a power conduit and swung it like a club, knocking the trooper back into the wall. Another came through. He fired, missing Jalen by inches. "Veyra!" Jalen shouted. "How long?" "Just a few more seconds," she cried. "Keep them away." He charged the second soldier, slamming the plasma cutter into his chest plate. Sparks flew, the smell of burning metal filling the air. The trooper fell, but more poured in behind him. Veyra turned as one of them raised his rifle toward Jalen. Without thinking, she grabbed a loose pipe and hit the soldier across the back of the helmet. The weapon clattered to the floor. Her hands shook, but her eyes burned with anger. "No one takes my life again," she said under her breath. Finally, the terminal beeped. "Upload complete." Veyra shouted. "It's done." But before they could move, the lead soldier grabbed her from behind, his armored arm locking around her throat. "You think that matters?" He growled. "We'll erase every trace." Jalen spun around, but the soldier pressed a plasma blade to Veyra's chest. "Take one more step, human, and she dies." Jalen froze, his pulse pounding. He saw Veyra's terrified eyes, then glanced at the console beside him. The readout showed the reactor's pressure rising dangerously. He realized what he could do, and what it would cost. "Let her go," he said quietly. The soldier sneered. "Or what? Or we all go up together." Jalen slammed his hand down on the override control. Warning alarms screamed. The floor began to shake as energy surged through the pipes. The soldier cursed, shoving Veyra aside as he lunged at Jalen. The human rolled away, grabbing the fallen plasma rifle. He fired once. The bolt hit the trooper square in the chest, sending him crashing into the wall. Smoke filled the room. "Run!" Jalen shouted, grabbing Veyra's hand. They sprinted through the chaos as the lights flickered wildly and flames burst from the vents. The heat was unbearable. They reached a service lift at the far end of the chamber. Jalen smashed the button. The doors opened just as the floor behind them cracked open, molten energy spilling out. They stumbled inside and the doors closed, the lift rising with a violent jolt. Through the small window, Veyra watched the chamber below collapse in a burst of blue fire. When the lift stopped, they emerged into a docking bay half buried in ice. Broken ships lay scattered, their hulls covered in frost. "We need a way out," Jalen said, coughing from the smoke. Veyra pointed to a small scout ship, half functional but intact. "That one might still fly," she said. Jalen ran to it, opening the hatch. The interior lights flickered weakly. He sat in the pilot's seat, hands flying over the controls. "Power's low, but it'll do." Veyra sat beside him, still gripping the data core tightly. "Did the message go through?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "Yes, the council received it. My father's crimes are exposed." Her voice trembled, half in relief, half in fear. "He'll come for me himself now." Jalen met her eyes. "Then we'll be ready." He powered up the engines. The ship lifted shakily off the icy ground, rising through the storm into the gray clouds above. Below them, the relay station exploded in a massive flash of light, sending a wave of fire and snow across the plains. Veyra stared down at it silently. "You saved me again," she said softly. "Guess I'm getting good at it," he replied. For the first time she smiled without fear. "Jalen," she said quietly, "if I survive this, I owe you more than I can ever repay." He looked at her and smiled. "You don't owe me anything, just stay alive." As the ship vanished into the storm, neither of them noticed the massive shadow that moved in orbit above. A colossal warship, black as night, bearing the crest of House Velnar. Deep inside its command chamber, an old voice echoed through the dark. "So," it said slowly, "my daughter has chosen a human." A cold smile followed. "Then the hunt continues." Asterisk. The stars stretched endlessly outside the small scout ship's window as it cut through the black void. For the first time in days, Varney's 9 was behind them, its icy storms just a memory. Jalen sat quietly at the controls, eyes fixed on the navigation screen. His hands trembled slightly from exhaustion, but his focus never wavered. Veyra sat beside him, wrapped in a thermal blanket, staring out at the stars. Her face was calm, but her eyes carried a storm of their own. "You haven't spoken since we left the surface," Jalen said softly. "You all right?" She didn't answer at first. Then, without looking at him, she said, "My father will not forgive this. He will make an example of us both." Jalen tried to smile. "Then he'll have to catch us first." She turned to him, her expression serious. "You don't understand who he is. When my father wants something, he buys it. If he cannot buy it, he destroys it." Jalen leaned back, arms crossed. "That why you ran away?" he asked. She hesitated, then nodded. "He wanted me to marry someone powerful, a warlord named Kryn Valen. The Union would give him control of an entire fleet." "But Kryn," she shuddered. "He doesn't marry. He collects." Jalen frowned. "You mean slaves?" "Trophies," she said bitterly. "And my father was willing to sell me for more power." Jalen's jaw tightened. "That's not a father. That's a tyrant." She looked at him, her voice trembling. "You think I don't know that? I've seen what he does to those who cross him. Whole colonies erased. Families reduced to ashes." She stared down at her hands. "He will not stop until I am back in his cage or dead." Before Jalen could reply, the ship's radar beeped sharply. His eyes darted to the screen. "We've got company," he said. 3 red dots appeared, closing fast. Veyra's breath caught. He found us. Jalen switched to manual control. Hang on. The ship jolted as blue plasma streaked past them, shaking the hull. They're firing already? Jalen shouted. He rolled the ship hard to the right, engines screaming. Hold tight. Veyra gripped the seat, her knuckles white. There's no way we can outrun them, she said. Jalen smirked faintly. Who said anything about running? He flicked a switch, diverting all remaining power to the rear thrusters. The scout ship dropped suddenly, diving toward the thin rings of a nearby gas planet. The pursuing ships followed, their weapons lighting the darkness like blue lightning. You're insane, Veyra shouted. Yeah, Jalen said, but it keeps me alive. They plunged into the planet's ring field, billions of chunks of ice and rock spinning at deadly speed. Jalen weaved through them, barely missing one collision after another. The pursuing ships struggled to follow, several clipping debris and exploding in blinding flashes. The scout ship shook violently as small fragments battered the hull. We can't stay here long, Jalen yelled. The shields won't hold. Veyra looked at the navigation screen. There's a mining station near the planet's north pole. If we can reach it, we can hide. Jalen nodded, pushing the engines harder. The ship broke free from the ring's edge, streaking toward a faint blinking beacon in the distance. Almost there, Jalen muttered. Another explosion rocked the ship as one of the pursuers hit them with a glancing shot. Alarms blared. We've lost the stabilizers, Veyra cried. Just a few seconds more. Jalen gritted his teeth, forcing the ship forward. They slammed into the docking bay of the mining station, sliding across the metal floor and crashing into a stack of containers. Smoke filled the cabin. Jalen coughed, unbuckling himself. You okay? He asked. Veyra nodded weakly. Alive, she said. Barely. They staggered out of the ship as the station's emergency lights flickered on. The bay was abandoned, cold, and silent. Looks like this place hasn't seen life in a while. Jalen muttered. They found a control room overlooking the planet below. From here, the gas giant glowed softly through the windows, lighting the station in eerie colors. Jalen patched into the terminal, trying to repair communication. If we can send a distress call to the council, maybe, he stopped. The screen flickered to life, showing a face neither of them expected. It was Veyra's father, Lord Velnar. His expression was calm, but his eyes burned with quiet fury. My daughter, he said, his voice deep and cold. You have embarrassed our name. You have betrayed your blood. Veyra stepped forward, trembling but unyielding. You betrayed yourself long before I did, she said. You sold your own child for power. Velnar's gaze shifted to Jalen. And you, he said slowly. The human who thinks himself her savior. You are nothing. A parasite feeding on her pity. Jalen clenched his fists. Funny, she didn't seem very pitiful when she saved both our lives. The old man's lip curled. Your bravery amuses me, little man. But understand this, everything you touch belongs to me. Every credit, every ship, every life. And soon, even your soul. The screen went dark. The station shuddered as massive shadows appeared outside the window. Velnar's warship had arrived. Its cannons glowed, aiming at the small outpost. Jalen turned to Veyra. We can't fight that, he said. No, she agreed, but maybe we can hurt it. She ran to the console, typing rapidly. This station still has mining charges in the core. If we overload them, it could cripple his ship when he gets close enough. Jalen hesitated. That's suicide. She looked at him, her eyes fierce. He'll never stop otherwise. He grabbed her wrist. Then let me do it. She stared at him, shaking her head. No, Jalen, you've already done enough. Exactly, he said. And I'm not stopping now. The warship outside moved closer, casting a shadow over the station. Lights flickered, alarms blared. Jalen and Veyra looked at each other, the silence between them heavy with what neither could say. Then he smiled faintly. "If this works," he said, "you'll be free." She swallowed hard. "If it works, you'll be gone." He stepped closer, brushing frost from her hair. "Not gone," he said softly. "Just part of the story." The station groaned as he turned toward the reactor access door. Behind him, Veyra whispered something he couldn't hear. The door slid shut. The last thing he saw through the glass was her face, calm, strong, and filled with something that looked like sorrow. Outside, the warship loomed closer, unaware of the storm building beneath its feet. The reactor chamber deep below the station roared with energy. Red warning lights painted the walls as Jalen stepped through the steam, his boots echoing on the metal floor. The air burned hot and smelled of ozone. He wiped the sweat from his brow, staring up at the massive fusion core towering above him, a humming heart of light and power. He knew once he overloaded it, there would be no going back. Still, he smiled quietly. "Yes, this is what happens when you buy a stranger a drink," he muttered to himself. Up above, in the control room, Veyra watched the monitors with shaking hands. She could see Jalen moving below through the cameras, a small figure surrounded by lightning. Her chest ached. Every instinct screamed for her to stop him, but the massive silhouette of her father's warship filled the sky beyond the window, its cannons ready to fire. There was no time left. She pressed the come. "Jalen," she said softly, "you don't have to do this. I can come down. We can find another way." His voice came through, calm and steady. "You said it yourself, Veyra. He'll never stop. Someone has to make him. You can't just throw your life away," she pleaded. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," he said. "I know you're worth saving." Her throat tightened. "Jalen." But he had already cut the line. Down in the reactor chamber, Jalen connected his tools to the central terminal. The fusion core's heat shimmered around him. He typed in the override sequence, his hands moving fast. The station groaned as energy surged through its structure. The lights flickered violently. He took a deep breath, looking at the core's energy field pulsing brighter with every second. "Come on, big guy," he whispered to the reactor. "Let's give them a show they won't forget." Above, Veyra turned to the communications console. Against all logic, she tried once more to reason with her father. The image of Lord Velnar appeared again on the cracked screen. "Father," she said, her voice steady now, "if there's even a part of you that remembers what it means to care, stop this." He looked at her coldly. "You've grown bold, child. Perhaps I should have replaced you sooner." His words were like ice. "You think your human toy can harm me?" "I don't think," she said quietly. "I know." The old man's eyes narrowed just as the floor shook beneath him. The warship's alarms blared in the background. "What have you done?" he growled. Veyra didn't answer. She turned off the transmission, tears filling her eyes. The station's structure was starting to fail. She could feel the tremors deepening. Still, she couldn't run. Not yet. Down below, Jalen pulled the final lever, locking the overload sequence. The reactor screamed as energy built faster than it could be contained. He looked up at the core, beautiful and terrifying like a miniature star. His body trembled from the heat, but he stayed. For a moment, he thought of Earth, of old bars filled with laughter, of small acts of kindness that never made the news. Then he thought of her, the alien woman with silver hair and emerald eyes, lost and lonely in the cold, and he smiled. "Worth it," he whispered. The explosion hit like a sunrise. A blinding flash tore through the mining station, shattering the sky with light. The blast wave hit Velnar's warship full force, ripping through its hull. Metal screamed and folded. The ship's cannons exploded outward, flames engulfing its engines. In seconds, the mighty warship began to break apart, its burning pieces falling toward the planet below like dying stars out in the control room. The force of the blast threw Veyra to the ground. The glass cracked, air roaring around her as alarms screamed. She crawled to the console, her hands shaking as she tried to stabilize the systems. "Jalen!" she cried into the cum. "Jalen, answer me!" Only static answered. Her eyes filled with tears as she watched the reactor chamber's feed fade to white. The blast's heat had erased everything below. The station drifted in silence for a while, floating among the debris of her father's empire. The stars were quiet again, cold and endless. Veyra pressed her forehead to the console, whispering, "You saved me." Hours passed. The emergency system slowly came back online. Veyra forced herself up, limping through the wreckage. Outside the shattered bay, the sky glowed orange from the broken remains of her father's ship burning in the planet's atmosphere. She stood there, the wind blowing through her silver hair, the data core still clutched in her hand. "You did it," she said softly. "You really did it." When the rescue team from the Galactic Council finally found her 2 days later, she was still standing by the window, watching the stars. They offered her warmth, food, safety. But when they asked her name, she said quietly, "Just Veyra, not Velnar anymore." Years passed. The Dominion was dismantled. The Council seized Velnar's wealth and freed his worlds. Veyra never returned to the palaces of her birth. Instead, she built something smaller, a small trade colony on the edge of known space. There, she created a home for refugees, for workers, for those who had nowhere else to go. And every year, when the winter storms came, she would sit outside with a mug of hot drink steaming in her hands. Looking up at the stars, she kept one thing in her quarters, a small, cracked metal badge with the name Jalen etched into it. It was all they had found from the wreckage. Some nights she would hold it and whisper, "You bought me warmth when no one else cared. And you gave me freedom when I thought it was lost." Outside her window, a comet passed through the sky, its light flickering across her face. She smiled faintly, the warmth of memory soft in her eyes. In the end, across galaxies and years, a human's simple kindness had toppled an empire and given birth to something far greater than power. And somewhere, in the quiet stars above, it felt like Jalen was smiling back.